my brothers and sisters, I came to tell you something today that may shake your routine, disturb your comfort zone, and wake up that hidden part of you that's been stretched too thin trying to be everything to everybody, but losing yourself in the process. Sometimes your absence is more powerful than your presence. There are moments in life when you need to understand that your silence, your space, your step back is not weakness, it is wisdom. When you've been giving, serving, showing up, explaining yourself, loving hard, and yet still being underappreciated, still being misunderstood, still being taken for granted, there comes a time when you have to stop talking and start moving. Not in bitterness, not in arrogance, but in awareness. When you leave a room, you teach the room something that your presence couldn't explain. Your absence becomes a mirror. It reflects what your presence used to carry. Some people will never understand your value while you're still there because they've grown numb to your greatness. Familiarity breeds a dangerous blindness. When you're always available, always showing up, always pouring into people who never pour back, you end up being treated like background noise, comforting, expected, but easily ignored. So let me ask you, what if the gift you're carrying can't be respected in the place you keep showing up to? What if your elevation requires isolation? Some lessons can't be taught by words, they must be taught by distance. And when God is getting ready to transition you into a higher level of clarity, purpose, and self-awareness, He often begins not by adding things to your life, but by subtracting your presence from the wrong spaces. Absence is not punishment, it's revelation. Sometimes, when people can no longer hear your voice, they begin to hear their own conscience. When your comfort is no longer present, they're left with the discomfort of their own decisions. And that discomfort becomes the seed of change. You don't have to argue with people to prove your worth. You don't have to beg to be seen. You don't have to fight to be respected. Just leave. Just be still. Just move in silence. Let them feel the void that you once filled without complaint. You were holding that thing together more than you realized. You were the glue in the family, the bridge in the friendship, the backbone in the relationship, the strength in the workplace. And they never acknowledged it. But when you step back, the pieces fall. Not because you want them to, but because they were leaning on you all along and didn't even know it. Your absence reveals the imbalance they ignored. This is not about revenge. This is about revelation. You're not disappearing to prove a point. You're detaching to protect your peace. You're walking away not to wound anyone, but to heal yourself. There's a version of you that's suffocating under the weight of being too present for people who are too absent when it comes to you. When you step back, you're not giving up. You're giving God room to work. Because as long as you're the one always fixing, helping, correcting, and holding it all together, others don't grow, and you don't grow either. Absence isn't always about removing yourself from toxic people. Sometimes it's about making space for your own growth. God can't give you new vision while you're constantly fighting old battles. He can't bring fresh oil to a heart that's leaking from overexposure. You've got to unplug to recharge. Sometimes you've got to disappear to develop. Because when you're too available, you become invisible. People stop seeing you. They stop valuing your time. They stop noticing your sacrifices. And when that happens, it's not your job to convince them. It's your responsibility to remove yourself and let life do the teaching. When you're no longer accessible, people have time to think. And in that quiet space, they may realize just how powerful your presence was. But by then, you've already grown, you've already healed, you've already stepped into a space where your value is recognized and your boundaries are respected. Let your absence become a sermon, not a loud one, not an angry one, but a powerful, undeniable sermon of quiet strength, a message that says, I love you, but I love myself too, a message that says, I was there, and I gave my best, but now I must go where I am fed, not just drained. So if you're in a season where you feel underappreciated, overworked, or unseen, this is your confirmation. Step back, Withdraw. Be still. Let them miss you. Your absence will say everything you were tired of saying. And in that silence, the truth will echo louder than words ever could. When you make yourself constantly available to people, over time, something dangerous begins to happen. They start to take you for granted. Not always because they're evil or ungrateful, but because human nature has a tendency to overlook what it can always access. When you're always picking up the phone, always replying to messages, always showing up, always saying yes, always rescuing, always being the dependable one, people stop seeing you as a blessing and start seeing you as a backup. They start to expect your loyalty, not cherish it. They assume your kindness is endless, your presence is automatic, and your energy is bottomless. But let me tell you, even the strongest among us run dry. Even the most loving hearts have limits. And if you don't set those limits, people will keep taking until there's nothing left of you but exhaustion and emptiness. You must understand that your time, your energy, your presence, they are not free. They are valuable, and anything valuable loses its perceived worth when it is overexposed. Think of it this way, even diamonds are kept in display cases. Even fine art is placed behind glass, not to hide it, but to protect its value. Because rarity creates respect. What people can access without effort, they often fail to appreciate. That's why some of the most valuable things in life are the least available. Some of us are draining ourselves trying to prove to others that we're loyal, committed, reliable, hoping that if we keep showing up, they'll finally see our worth. But the truth is, it's not your consistency they're ignoring. It's your boundaries they're exploiting. When you teach people that you're always accessible, you also teach them that your time and energy don't require honor. You teach them that you'll be there whether they show gratitude or not. And that is not humility. That's self-neglect. You've got to stop showing up for people who disappear on you. Stop overcommitting to people who underdeliver for you. Every time you say yes to a request that drains you, you're saying no to something that could develop you. You're saying no to rest, no to your personal growth, no to the assignments God has for you. And let me tell you, God did not give you breath and purpose just to be a crutch for other people's laziness, inconsistency, or manipulation. You need discernment, because not every call for help is a divine assignment. Some are distractions dressed up in urgency, and you've been mistaking your constant accessibility for compassion, when in fact it's become a doorway to your depletion. You're not running on faith, you're running on fumes, and if you don't pause to recalibrate, you'll crash in a place you were never supposed to stop in. There's a reason Jesus often withdrew from the crowds. He healed, he taught, he poured out. But then he left. He wasn't always available. He knew that even divine power needs sacred space. He understood the importance of boundaries. He didn't chase every need because he knew that being everything to everyone would eventually make him nothing to himself. You too must learn the strength of stepping away. You must recognize that being less available does not mean being less loving. In fact, sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and others, is to create distance, to allow room for people to grow without you always carrying them, to give them the gift of responsibility, to give yourself the gift of restoration. Let people earn access to you, not through manipulation, not through guilt trips, but through honor, consistency, and mutual investment. Stop answering every message immediately. Stop dropping everything to meet every demand. Stop trying to prove your worth through your availability. You're not on call for anyone but the one who created you. You don't owe constant presence to those who only reach out when they need something. Let them wonder why you're not so quick to respond anymore. Let them notice the silence. Let them ask where you went, Because in that space, in that distance, they'll start to reflect, and maybe, just maybe, they'll begin to realize how much you truly brought to the table. But whether they realize it or not isn't even the point. The point is that you realize it. You are not replaceable. You are not disposable. You are not just there. You are a divine presence, a carrier of wisdom, of love, of purpose. And it's time you start treating yourself that way. Let your time be precious. Let your space be guarded. Let your energy be protected. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to beg to be seen. Just stop showing up like your presence is guaranteed, and watch how quickly the atmosphere changes. Not because you're punishing people, but because you're positioning yourself for peace. When you pull back, the right people will lean in. The wrong ones will fall away, and you'll begin to see who values you for who you are, not just for what you do. Let your availability be intentional, not automatic. Because when you stop devaluing your worth through overexposure, the world will have no choice but to treat you with the respect you should have demanded all along. Growth and comfort don't live in the same neighborhood. One of the greatest lies we tell ourselves is that we can evolve while staying connected to everything and everyone we've always known. But the truth is, real growth requires real separation. You can't step into the fullness of who you're called to be while still clinging to people, places, and patterns that only support the version of you that's already outdated. Sometimes the hardest part of your journey is not the obstacles in front of you. It's the attachments behind you. There comes a time in every life where God begins to stir something inside you. You can feel it. You're no longer content with shallow conversations, surface-level friendships, empty routines. You begin to crave more, see more, believe for more. But then you look around, and the very people who used to walk with you start looking at you funny. The rooms you used to find comfort in now feel tight, suffocating. The environments you used to settle in begin to feel like cages. That's not confusion, that's confirmation. Your growth is creating separation. And here's the challenge. Growth doesn't always look like going higher first. Sometimes it looks like walking away. Sometimes it looks like being alone for a season. Sometimes it looks like people saying you've changed, and you have, because who you were could never carry what you're about to step into. The assignment you're being called to can't be completed with the same mindsets that got you stuck. The promise that's ahead of you won't fit into the patterns behind you. So yes, growth demands separation, and I get it, separation hurts. We're wired for connection. We love familiarity. We cling to history. But history isn't always holy. Just because you've known them a long time doesn't mean they're meant to go with you into the next chapter. Just because that circle once fed you doesn't mean it can still sustain you. You outgrew that circle, not because you're better, but because your calling got bigger. Let me tell you something, not everyone is assigned to your future. Some people were only sent for a season. They were part of your development, but they are not part of your destiny. And if you try to drag dead weight into a divine calling, you'll delay what God has already prepared for you. Every time you try to hold on to what you should be letting go of, you create tension where God wants to bring peace. You've got to trust the separation. Trust that when God removes people, it's not always rejection. It's often redirection. He's not taking something from you to hurt you. He's clearing space to bless you. But he can't pour new wine into old wineskins. He can't bring new levels into a life that's still entertaining old devils. And sometimes he'll allow relationships to shift, doors to close, and comfort zones to collapse. Not to break you, but to build you. You won't grow if you stay surrounded by people who only support your stagnation. You can't fly if you keep hanging around chickens who are afraid of heights. If your circle doesn't challenge you, stretch you, and hold you accountable, it's not a circle, it's a cage. And some of you are living in emotional and spiritual cages because you're too afraid to separate from what's familiar. But comfort is the enemy of progress. You've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You've got to stop asking for permission to grow. Stop shrinking to make others feel secure. Stop apologizing for evolving. The people who truly love you will adjust. The ones who don't were never really for you. They were for your convenience. When you stop feeding their egos, when you stop performing, when you stop playing small just to fit in, they'll walk away. Let them, because your identity is not found in their acceptance. It's found in God's assignment. Some seasons require you to walk alone, not because you're unwanted, but because you're being prepared. God isolates before He elevates. He separates before He accelerates. If you're in a season where it feels like people are leaving, opportunities are drying up, and you're all by yourself, don't panic. That's not abandonment. That's alignment. He's pruning you, and pruning always feels like loss before it feels like growth. But on the other side of this separation is fruit you couldn't bear in your last season. On the other side of this transition is a version of you that's stronger, clearer, and more focused. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. So let go of the friendships that drain you. Let go of the spaces that keep you small. Let go of the relationships that only survive when you betray yourself. Growth requires you to leave behind the version of you that everyone was comfortable with and become the version that God destined. This is your season of separation, not to lose yourself, but to find yourself, not to punish others, but to pursue purpose, because destiny demands decisions, and every step you take away from what's hindering you is a step closer to what's been waiting for you all along. You are not required to be everything for everyone. You're not obligated to answer every call, solve every problem, show up for every request, or explain every decision. There comes a point in your life where you must learn to protect your energy and guard your identity, because if you don't, people will wear you down, pull you apart, and drain you dry. And you'll be left wondering how you lost yourself in the process of trying to help everybody else. It's a beautiful thing to be compassionate. It's a noble thing to care deeply. But if your compassion becomes a doorway for constant access, you will begin to feel less like a person and more like a service. You'll start to notice that people don't really see you anymore. They just see what you can do for them. They see your support, your wisdom, your presence, your help. But they fail to acknowledge the human behind all that giving. And that's where burnout begins. Not because you're weak, not because you don't love people, but because you're trying to carry weight that wasn't assigned to you. Every time you say yes, out of guilt instead of conviction, you make a silent promise to abandon your peace. Every time you answer out of obligation instead of alignment, you slowly erase parts of your identity in exchange for temporary approval. You begin to forget what you need, what you feel, what you're called to do, because you're too busy responding to what everyone else demands of you. Let me tell you something real. Your energy is sacred. It is not an unlimited resource. You have a divine assignment on your life, and that assignment cannot be completed if your energy is constantly scattered in 10 different directions, trying to fix people who don't want to grow, support people who don't support you, or hold together things that God is trying to let fall apart. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is say no. Sometimes the most anointed thing you can do is walk away from conversations that exhaust your soul. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to reply to every misunderstanding. You don't have to keep showing up for people who consistently show you that they don't value your presence. That's not humility. That's a lack of boundaries. And boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They're gates to let the right people in. Boundaries are how you tell the world, I know who I am, I know what I carry, and I refuse to live in a constant state of depletion just to maintain someone else's comfort. And hear me, you don't have to justify those boundaries. You don't have to write long explanations. You don't need permission to protect your peace. If they call you selfish, let them. If they say you've changed, thank them. If they accuse you of being distant, smile and say, I've finally learned how to be close to myself. Because the truth is, you cannot serve from an empty vessel. You can't pour life into others if you're constantly running on fumes. You can't uplift anybody else if you're buried under the weight of your own exhaustion. So start asking yourself better questions. Who drains me? Who strengthens me? What environments cause me to shrink? What conversations leave me bitter? What spaces allow me to breathe? These questions are not about judgment. They are about stewardship. Because if you don't manage your own soul, someone else will gladly mismanage it for you. Stop making yourself available to chaos. Stop feeling guilty for resting. Stop explaining why you're not at every gathering, answering every message, or solving every issue. You are not God. You are not omnipresent. You are not responsible for everyone else's healing, change, or understanding. You are responsible for your health, your heart, and your purpose. And sometimes the best way to reclaim your energy is to go quiet. Disappear from the noise. Unplug from the performance. Retreat into stillness. Not because you're hiding, but because you're healing. Not because you're avoiding, but because you're aligning. You don't have to broadcast your boundaries. You just have to honor them. Eventually, the people meant to walk with you will learn how to honor them too. It's not selfish to choose peace. It's not wrong to prioritize rest. It's not arrogant to say, I can't do that right now. What's selfish is expecting someone to keep pouring when they're empty. What's wrong is pretending you're okay while your soul is screaming for space. What's arrogant is demanding someone sacrifice their entire being just to keep others comfortable. Protecting your energy isn't about cutting people off. It's about choosing yourself in a world that constantly asks you to abandon yourself. It's about learning how to stop over-explaining and start over-respecting. It's about finally realizing that your worth is not found in how much you do, but in who you are. So if you're tired, rest. If you're stretched, step back. If you're drained, disconnect. And if they don't understand, that's okay. You don't owe anyone an apology for protecting the very life God has entrusted you to steward. Your peace matters, your clarity matters, your energy matters, and you are not required to waste any of it trying to prove yourself to people who only notice you when they need something. This is your time to protect your spirit, protect your focus, protect your identity, and be unapologetic about it. Silence is not always absence. Sometimes it is a strategy. There's a sacred power in choosing to step back and become silent, not to vanish, not to withdraw out of weakness, but to reposition yourself in wisdom and authority. Too many people waste energy explaining, defending, and justifying their every move to people who have already made up their minds. They argue with those who don't listen, overextend for those who don't appreciate, and perform for audiences who never intended to clap. But there comes a point in life when you realize the greatest response is not your voice, it's your absence. Let them miss you. Let them feel what your silence sounds like. Let them taste the atmosphere that exists when your presence is no longer available to be taken for granted. You've spoken enough. You've explained enough. You've shown up enough. Now it's time to go quiet, not out of spite, but out of strength, because when you mature, you stop chasing closure and start embracing clarity. You stop trying to convince people of your value, and you let your absence reveal it. You see, people don't often realize what they had until it's gone. They assume you'll always be there because you've always been there. You were the one who answered the calls, who made the sacrifices, who covered the gaps, who carried the emotional weight. And they became comfortable in your consistency, but comfort has a way of creating blindness. They forgot your presence was a gift, not a guarantee, and sometimes God will allow a season of separation so others can experience what life feels like without you. Not to punish them, but to teach them. not to elevate your ego, but to preserve your purpose. When you step back, it gives people the space to reflect, to recognize, to recalibrate. And if they truly value you, they'll respond with maturity. But if they only valued what you did for them, they'll simply replace you and move on. Either way, the silence reveals the truth. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to fight for attention. You don't have to keep showing up just to remind people that you matter. When you go silent, intentionally, prayerfully, strategically, you give the weight of your absence the opportunity to speak louder than your words ever could. Your silence becomes a mirror. It forces people to face the reflection of their behavior, their neglect, their assumptions, and sometimes that's the only way they'll truly see what they've lost. Letting them miss you isn't about manipulation, it's about restoration. You're restoring your peace, your power, your priorities. You're pulling back so that you can pour inward. Because for too long you've been giving at a pace that left nothing for yourself. And now, in your silence, you begin to hear your own soul again. You begin to reconnect with your identity, not as a servant to everyone else's needs, but as a child of God, worthy of rest, respect, and renewal. Let them miss your encouragement. Let them miss your insight. Let them miss your love, and in the stillness of your absence, let them feel the weight of what they overlooked. Not so you can return with resentment, but so you can move forward with resolve. Because some of you have been stuck in cycles. Circles of people who only come around when they want something. Relationships that require constant explaining. Environments that thrive on your silence, but collapse when you speak truth. And the only way to break the cycle is to exit it, quietly, intentionally, completely, and if they ask what happened, you don't owe them a monologue. Growth doesn't always need an announcement. Some exits are better unspoken. Some departures don't need closure. They are the closure, and sometimes the best apology you'll ever receive is your own decision to stop expecting one. You don't have to be angry to walk away. You can walk away with peace in your heart and purpose in your steps, knowing that your silence is not weakness. It's wisdom. In this season, let your absence preach. Let it speak of boundaries you never enforced before. Let it testify of healing you chose over habit. Let it represent the strength it took to finally say, I deserve better. Because you do, and if they never come looking for you, that's your answer. But if they do, let it be because they realized who you are, not just what you offered. You don't need to always be available to be valuable. You don't need to always speak to be powerful. Sometimes your silence carries the authority of your entire journey. Sometimes your stillness communicates 1,000 messages more clearly than your loudest sermon ever could. So pull back, get quiet, not to disappear but to discern, not to retreat but to refocus. You are not abandoning your calling. You're aligning with it. You're not avoiding confrontation. You're choosing peace. And when the time is right, when the lesson has been learned, and when the space has served its purpose, you'll re-emerge. Not the same, but stronger, wiser, and far more intentional. My brothers and sisters, hear me clearly. There is a time to speak, and there is a time to be silent. A time to show up, and a time to step back. A time to give, and a time to guard. You were not created to be consumed by the expectations of others. You were not designed to be constantly accessible, endlessly explainable, or universally understood. You are called, you are chosen, and you are anointed for something far greater than people, pleasing and emotional exhaustion. Let them miss you, not because you're trying to be mysterious, but because you're finally moving in maturity. Let them wonder where you went while you're rising in purpose. Let them sit in silence while you heal in secret. Let them replay your words while you reset your soul, not to punish, but to position, not to hurt, but to honor what God has placed inside you. Your absence is not rejection, it is redirection. Your silence is not emptiness, it is evidence that you've begun to understand the value of your presence. Protect your peace, embrace your growth, honor your boundaries. And above all, Trust that the God who called you is also the God who will cover you while you move in wisdom. This is your season to let go, to let grow, and yes, to let them miss you. Because when you return, you won't return for validation. You'll return elevated, empowered, and exactly where God needs you to be. And if they didn't value you then, they'll recognize the weight of your worth now. Let them miss you. And while they do, you keep becoming